Hi, students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian, and I am streaming to you live from Central Europe here in Budapest, the capital city of Hungary, situated on the beautiful Danube River. I hope everybody is having a fantastic weekend so far. This class is going to be IELTS questions and answers session for members. There was our first member joining in, Jairam, followed by Alexander. Welcome to the class, gents. Of course, these materials, the strategies that you will hear, they come from our world-class websites for IELTS preparation, aehelp.com for the academic test and GIELTS help.com for the general. If you have questions about the exam, don't be shy, send me an email. My email is Adrian, ADRIAN, at aehelp.com. And make sure to download our new app, Academic IELTS Help. Hi, Li Ying. Good afternoon to you as well. All right, students. So let's get into it. Again, this is a members chat question and answer for all of our viewers. We have a speaking part 1 class coming up in about 90 minutes. Hi, I'm Arjit, Roshni, Preeti. Good to have you in class. We do this kind of a class every 2 weeks for members. This is a question and answer session where members have the chance to ask us any question about the exam that is maybe confusing or unclear or difficult. And today, I thought we could focus on this question specifically. How do I fix my mistakes? So a lot of times I hear students are quite frustrated about their mistakes, and they feel that they're stuck doing or making the same mistakes over and over again. Now, Roshni says, well, it's quite hard. And Roshni, you're right. Fixing mistakes is not easy, no matter which walk of life we're talking about. When we have an erroneous situation, so a situation where we've made errors or mistakes, it takes effort to fix. And Roshni, I think that's a good first realization and a good first point to kind of start on, is that mistakes, you have to work hard to fix mistakes. Fixing mistakes does not come easy. So you have to stay the course and you have to work hard. Yeah, I'm not going to misinform you and tell you that it's easy to fix mistakes. It's usually not. It usually takes a lot of effort to fix mistakes. All right, members, what do you feel are the most common mistakes in the listening section? So let's target that first. Of course, I have some ideas and we can discuss those, but I'd really like to hear your input. So these question and answer classes are really for you members. So tell me, what do you feel? Let's go section by section. So let's start with the listening section. What do you feel in the listening section are some of the more common mistakes that are difficult to fix? Okay, so Li Ying says plurals for me. So, okay, that's a good one, Li Ying. Thank you for suggesting that. So, knowing when to use and when not to use plurals, right? Okay, let's talk about that one. There's a couple more, so I'll note those and then we'll go through them. So Zainab says spelling is another one for the listening. So spelling. Okay. Roshni says staying focused on the recording rather than getting lost in the questions. So okay, those are all some really great suggestions. Preeti says listening to wrong words because of pronunciation. Okay, sure. So Preeti, I'll take that. So catching the pronunciation. Yeah, I'll take that as well. Amarjeet, I think your question is the same as Li Ying. So how do I identify plurals and singulars? Okay, all right. Good. These are all really good questions. So let's take them one at a time. Let's start with Li Ying and Amarjeet's questions, okay? And then Danish says numbers and dates. Okay, so when do you use plurals and when do you not use plurals? Now, obviously, the first answer there is focus on hearing the S sound on the end of words, okay? So I'm going to give you some strategies and some advice for each of these multiple ones. For plurals, the S sound, so English has this interesting sound. We also have the TH, the th sound. Of course, the TH sound comes usually at the beginning of words, like through and so on. But the S sound for plurals comes at the end. So practice, here's one that you can try, okay? So practice listening to words in plural and singular. Train your ears to catch the S sounds, okay? That's my first piece of advice, okay? Now, how can you do that? So you can go to Google, okay? So this is our academic website here. And you have listening exercises there that will help you. But here we can go to Google and then we can type in a word like pen. Okay. And then let's go for pen definition. Okay. Now, you won't hear it, and I'm going to darken the screen. I realize that it's quite bright for you at this point, so don't worry about that. I'll darken us up here so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so here you have the word pen. Okay, and on Google, you have this neat little option where you can listen to that audio. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. Okay, and then you can type in pens. Okay, and it doesn't give you the plural, but I was hoping that it would. But the idea is that what I'm trying to show you is that find plurals and singulars. So I'm sure if we do plurals versus singular in English audio, so this is what I would do if I were doing this. Okay. Basically, I'm looking for audio material where I can listen to singular and plural forms of the words. Okay. So do your search. Okay, so I have these definitions coming up here. Basically listen and repeat. So listen to plurals, listen to singulars. That's kind of my first advice. Of course, that's going to take you a little bit of time, so bear with me. I know that wasn't the greatest example of it, but I think you get the idea. The second one, Lee, is to Pay attention to the grammar in the question, okay? Especially the verb. So the second piece of advice is pay careful attention to the verb and context of the question. This usually lets you know whether it is a singular or plural. Okay? Do you know what I mean by that, Lee, when I say pay attention to the grammar of the question? So when you're looking at a specific listening question, if you see the verb are, then that gives you a hint that you're dealing with a plural. Okay? As most of you know, the verb changes for the noun depending on whether it's a plural or a singular. That's especially clear with the verb be. Okay, so if you see is, then it's a singular. If you see are, then it's a plural. So that's going to help you. Yeah, in Danish is calling it the helping verb. Okay, now something to keep in mind, Lee and students, members, is no, you can't. Amarjeet, that's a good question, and I'll explain that in a second. Amarjeet asked a very good question there. So if you are not sure whether it is a plural or singular, then spend time on it to figure it out during the 10 minutes to transfer answers to the answer sheet. Okay, so don't get stuck on a question while the audio is playing to try to figure out if it's a plural or a singular. Do it in the 10 minutes when you have time to transfer the answers to the answer sheet. Amarjeet asked a good question here, and I'm going to answer that because it's very related to this, and students do this. So Amarjeet says, can I write museums like this as the answer? Okay, and this way kind of make sure that whether it's a singular or a plural, it doesn't matter because I've done both. The answer is no. You will, in most cases, Amarjeet, get this wrong. No. The only time this is correct is if both singular and plural can be used. Okay, so there are a few questions in the listening and the reading where either the singular or the plural of the word is acceptable. Then this answer would be correct, but only then, and that's very rare. So don't do this, okay? Even in the situation where one or both are correct, just write one of them. So just write museum and you'll get it correct anyway. Does that make sense, Amarjeet? So this is definitely not a good idea to do that, okay? Danish, that's another good question. You should always leave your first response. Okay, that's going to be, I'm going to write that Danish as a different question and then I'll answer that. That's a good question too. Should I change answers later on if I'm not sure? Okay, so we'll talk about that in a second. All right. Okay, so let me open up a practice exam here. From one of our books. Okay, and we'll get into just a kind of a specific example of this without playing the audio. Okay. So notice here, okay, so the question helps you figure out whether it's a plural or singular. So here, let's just kind of go through some of these together real quick. So what program is the student enrolled in? Here, I know from the question, because it's an is, let me get this even bigger for you. Okay, So what program is? So when I'm reviewing this, I know that whichever answer I get here, this is going to be a singular. Okay? Because of the is. Now I know that's a simple example. I know most of you would get that, but that's exactly what you're paying attention to. Okay? So it's going to be one program. If this, the question itself, would be programs are, then I might have a plural answer here. Okay, so really pay attention to the question to help you figure out whether it's a singular or a plural. Okay, let me see. So these are usually, of course, with the fill in the blank questions. All right, so this is a good example, the filling in the blank. Here, plural or singular? Lee, what do you think for number 19? What do you think? That's right. Why do we know that? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so Li Ying says because there's an there, right? So this participle tells you that this is singular. Okay, absolutely. The article tells you that it's singular. Very good. Okay, here, number 20. Singular or plural? Singular or plural? So S or no S on whatever noun is coming here. Forget that this word is here for a second because it's actually going to be an adjective. Yeah, how would we know that this is singular? Okay, and this is a little bit of an awkward example, but it does work. Notice that these are all singular. Okay, so singular, singular. That's another hint. If you have a list of nouns, okay, if you have a list of nouns, then the nouns, because you have parallel grammar, will also be singular in the answer. So in English, it's incorrect to do singular, 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 and then suddenly plural. Okay, so the nouns are singular, they're all singular. So absolutely, that will help you to figure that out. Okay, so pay attention to those. Even if you don't catch it during the listening, or if you hear an S that's maybe not there, really pay attention when you're transferring your answers to the answer sheet. Okay? All right. So that's a little bit about fixing singulars. All right. Let's go to the next question, spelling. A little bit more simple to explain this. In the English language, we have letters that form sounds, like, for example, the TH or the CH. And learning the pronunciation of the English language, like th or ch, what is that called? So what do we call this in English for spelling? Okay, because in spelling you have to understand this part of English. So this part of English where we create sounds with multiple letter combinations, what do we call that? Yeah, so Amrit says it's called phonetic or phonetics. Okay. Yeah, it's called phonetics. So for spelling, when you're practicing spelling, it's really, really important to research and be familiar with phonetics. Okay? So for spelling, make sure to research and review phonetics. Now that you can absolutely do online. Okay? So I know I've checked that one before several times. So if you search for English phonetics, I'll show you this real quick. You'll get lots of websites that come up to help you with that. Okay. So in the wrong place. So here you even get the sounds of English and the International Phonetic Alphabet. So that's what you need to focus and pay attention to. Now, the other one that you can search for, okay, so search for English phonetics, practice them, all right? And here's a question back to you for asking me about spelling. How many of you, so I'm answering your question with a question, I know that's not always the best, but there's my question, okay, to the viewers. What spelling game apps do you have on your phone? I'm very curious. So, which spelling game apps have you actually downloaded to your mobile phone or your tablet? Please share them with each other because I know there's lots of different ones. So Alexander says, I like Elevate. Why do you like Elevate, Alexander? Roshni says, I like the one called Skippy. Word Up, Valiant Venture, I think it's more of a vocabulary. I think you can learn spelling. It shows you spelling, but it's not really a spelling game app. I'm not familiar, Alexander and Roshni, with Skippy, but maybe. Okay, so Elevate, Skippy. I'm talking about apps that are not specifically for vocabulary, but they're for practicing spelling. So they're actually like strategy and skill games that you can practice to improve your spelling. So I have Elevate, Skippy, Word Up. We might actually do a couple of projects together with Word Up in the near future here. Amarjeet says, hello, English. I used to have a really cool one where you could actually do battle with spelling words. If you spelt them wrong, you could take a punch or a kick, and then if you spelt them correctly, you would be able to choose an attack and defeat enemies. It was kind of a cool little game. So, hello, English, sure. Valiant Venture says AE Help. All right. AE Help, sure. AE Help, Valiant Ventures, not all, really a spelling game app. But if you go to your Google Play Store, let's just do this for fun real quick. So spelling bee apps. Let's do that search there. Okay. Actually, I'm going to search for it more specifically. Just bear with me. There you go. All right, let me darken up the screen. I know that's a little bit annoying that you can't see it, but it's just the projection. So there you go. There's Spelling Bee Pro, and it seems like it's got a fairly good rating. It's 4.5, okay, by people. So one way to search for these students is actually search for Spelling Bee. Spelling competitions in English, they're called spelling bees. And when I'm talking about spelling games, I'm not just talking about vocabulary, but I'm actually talking about specifically spelling games. So not learning vocabulary, but apps that are designed for improving your spelling. And there's lots of them, because remember that even English speakers have to learn spelling, and there's competitions even in English speaking countries for who is the better speller. So there are games designed for anyone, native speaker or not native speaker, to improve their spelling to a higher level. So search for those. I know, Alexander, it's bright because it's a short throw projection behind me, so I'm trying to compensate for that as much as possible. Okay, all right, so spelling, focus on spelling game apps, focus on phonetics. Those are the two biggest tips that I can give you without going into too much detail. So you can play spelling games with each other as well, of course, in class, but apps, spelling game apps are really good. Search for spelling bee games, okay? Spelling bee games. Okay, search for that and you'll find some pretty cool ones. All right. And thank you for sharing those ideas. Okay. All right. So next question was, how do I focus on the audio rather than the questions? Any ideas, students, on what you can do to focus on the audio? So what should you do to focus on the audio rather than really just staring at the questions and getting lost? Any ideas? There's one of the big strategies that I always teach which can really help you with that. Which one is it? Which one of the strategies that I often mention in class and in many of the videos on the channel is effective to keep you focused on what you're listening or what you're hearing rather than the questions themselves? It's not so much paraphrasing, Roshni. Yeah, that's right. It's visualization. Yeah, so visualize. Always focus on visualizing the information that you hear. This begins with the questions. During the review time, begin to see what you will hear. Okay, so if I hop back to the listening questions here, and we're looking at this summary completion, the beach bars serve beer and cocktails from noon until something in the afternoon. In addition to the small cafe on the beach, we also offer a changing where you can change in and out of your swimming costume. We also offer plenty of sports at the resort. So when you're reading this question and waiting for the audio to start, what should you see? What should you see which will help you to focus more on the audio? Okay, so what should you see in this case here? And this is this kind of the same strategy for staying focused in the reading section as well. If you're following the course, so if you've used the interactive course on our website, then you should have a good answer for this question. Amarjeet says maybe see a story. Roshni says beach and beverages. Yes, Amarjeet, you should see a story. Roshni, you're right. You should see the beach. You should see the beverages. But more specifically, what you should see is yourself, right? So the example is I see myself on the beach with blue ocean and a mojito in my hand, waiting for the beach volleyball game to start, and checking the time on my watch to make sure I can get one last drink before the bar closes. Okay, so this is just one visualization. This is in my head. Of course, it's not the exact same that you're going to see, but this is what you're visualizing. Remember, students, what I keep reminding you, to be active within the information. That is essential to staying focused in this long 40 minutes, because I know from doing the exam myself that staying focused for 40 minutes on listening, especially in another language, is very tricky. The brain can kind of start to escape and wander away. So the way to get your brain focused and tricked into staying there and holding the information is to have it participate. So have it be a part of that information. Okay? So always strive to be a part of the information that you hear and read. Okay? Train yourself to do this at home before the IELTS exam. Okay? So that's really, really important. All right? Danish, car park. The second one is correct with the hyphen, okay? Because it's one word that you're referring to, okay? So Valiant Venture says, so how do I do this for abstract art or for abstract information, right? Valiant Venture, so if we're talking about philosophy, for example, that's a very good question, okay? So you have to be more creative, Valiant Venture. In that case, you do what you can. So for instance, you become the artist, okay? So that's painting a blue square. The human mind, Valiant Venture, is incredible, and we are able to visualize intangible concepts. So we can even visualize, for example, the idea of perfect. So if you hear the idea of perfect, how do you see that? So how do you translate this notion or this concept of perfect? Well, in my mind, one of the best representations of the idea of perfect is simply the perfect circle, which is definitely not that. But I would visualize this circle to represent the idea of perfect, okay? If I were reading or listening about abstract art, Valiant Venture, then I would imagine that I'm the artist, and I would connect the information that I hear and read about abstract art to me as the artist, as the painter who is expressing himself through abstract art. But for sure, Valiant Venture, you have to practice that at home. Why is car park correct with a hyphen, Preeti? Because the two words together express one concept, right? The car park is basically the parking lot where you can park your car. So in that case, it's correct. Now, remember, Preeti, there are lots of exceptions to certain rules in English as well, and I know that can become a real headache. But car park done with a hyphen is certainly correct because you're expressing one concept. It's one noun, the two words together. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. So I do want to cover a few of these, and we're only to listening so far. So catching pronunciation. Danish, the hyphen rule, just as a side note, because you're really pushing this, the hyphen rule is basically you need to use a hyphen when two words together express one idea. So if you have, for example, well thought out. Or no, that wouldn't be a good example of this. For example, well designed car. Then the well designed is one adjective. So the well needs a hyphen with the word designed to create the adjective well designed. Okay. All right. Let's kind of stay in structure here. And one of the important pieces of advice I can give you, students, is when you're correcting mistakes and you're practicing these, make sure to stay focused, stay structured in your learning. So try not to sidetrack and go off topic. Okay. It's very important to focus on one idea at a time. So, in the listening section, catching the pronunciation can be quite tricky because there are many different dialects of English. Okay, so this is difficult because there are many different native English accents, even within England. Okay, so there's quite a range of accents that you can hear. So IELTS is a British test, but that doesn't just mean that you're going to hear one type of English. So you're going to hear different types of English from different speakers. So man, woman, old, young, North England, Londoner. Okay. And so on. So within the IELTS exam, you have to be prepared to listen to different English accents. Okay. That's why it's really important to train your ears to different kinds of English. And the way to do that is listen to a variety of English. So broaden the range of English that your brain is used to, okay? Now, here's an interesting thought for you. So, oftentimes you'll hear people say, like, oh, when I hear somebody speaking English who is Chinese, I can't understand what they're saying. And then you'll hear other people saying, oh, when I hear people in India speak English, I can't understand them. And then you'll hear people saying, oh, when I hear Germans speaking English, I can't understand them. When I hear people from England or Scotland, there's no way I can understand them. And then they close themselves off to listening to those different accents in English. And they complain about them, and people are sometimes even rude about them. Like they'll say, oh, people in this part of the world, they speak terrible English. It sounds awful. That is the worst way to catch pronunciation. Okay? Your brain is an adaptive machine. It's able to adapt. And probably you know this, that it's quite amazing how English or ESL teachers So there's an interesting question, right? Isn't it amazing how well ESL teachers, so your English as second language teachers, can understand many different accents in English? Students are always like, wow, Adrian, you can understand that guy from Taiwan, you can understand that girl from Rajasthan, and you can understand that guy from South Africa, and they all have really different English. But yeah, because that's what I've been doing a lot of my life, is listening to people speaking English with lots of different accents. So guess what one of the best ways or one of the best exercises is to improve your ability to understand different accents in English, including within Britain? So Valiant Venture says just learn. But what do you think? What advice am I going to give you here? So what is a great way to improve your ability to understand more people from around the world who use English as their first language or as their second language? Roshni says podcasts. Preeti says radio. But I'm thinking of something even more specific here. Jairam says watch movies with subtitles. BBC podcasts. In some ways, yes. But in other ways, what I'm going to suggest here is practice listening to a variety of English accents. Don't just watch movies from India and the US, but always switch up the cultural background or the culture, the nationality of the films. So a lot of us watch a lot of movies a lot of the time, and maybe try doing this for a month or two. So this is actually an interesting exercise, and you might not like it at first because you might say, well, I don't understand anything when I hear that accent in the movie. But one day, watch a British film. And nowadays, with the internet and Netflix, we can actually watch, it's beautiful because we can really watch a very broad range of movies. So watch a British film. The next day, watch a film from New Zealand. The next day, watch a film from Australia. Okay? Keep switching. Every day for a month, and suddenly you will realize that you can understand a lot more English. Okay? Try that. It's a pretty interesting practice strategy, and I bet that you can find an interesting topic or an interesting movie to watch in any of these different nationalities or cultures. So switch from a British film to a film from New Zealand, to a film from Canada, to a film from Australia, to a film from the US, to a film from India. Try it out. Do that for a month. Just keep finding the topics in different topics, and I guarantee that suddenly you'll be like, whoa, I'm starting to understand a lot more English, a lot more accents. Okay? Train your brain. All right? Numbers and dates. Again, what I just said will actually help you understand numbers and dates. Numbers and dates, practice dictation. Okay? So for numbers and dates, you really need to just practice dictation. So somebody dictates you a set of numbers, you write them down. Make sure that you learn to spell months of the year, days of the week. That's very important for easy points in the listening section. We have some audio CD recordings on our website that focus just on numbers and dates. So you can use that at aehelp.com. Okay? Let's look at F here. Should I change answers later on if I'm not sure? Amarjeet, if they're speaking too fast, many times, especially on YouTube, you can actually slow down the playback. Okay? So you can take it down to like half speed. All right? If it's too fast. Let's talk about this question here. Should I change answers later on if I'm not sure? What do you think my answer is to that? So should you change answers? No, never. Okay. There's a study in psychology with 10,000 students who took a multiple choice test, showed that 80% of changed answers are usually wrong or wrong. And in most cases, they were changed from a correct answer. Okay, so this was an interesting question for psychologists as well. What happens when people are not sure about their answers and then they change them? Is that usually a good idea? 80% of the time, no. So the theory is if you never change your answers in your life, then at the end of it all, you will likely have had more correct answers than if you kept changing the answers that you were not sure about. So the psychology study showed with 10,000 students that 80% of changed answers are wrong. So that means only 1 in 5 changes actually lead to a correct change. And there were more cases where those changes were actually from the correct answer. So the student had the correct answer and then they changed it to the wrong answer. So the only time that you would ever want to consider that is if you're 120% correct, that you've made a mistake. So notice here the hyphen rule, again Danish, multiple choice. The grammar check is saying, hey, multiple choice should be with a hyphen, like that. Why? Because multiple choice is one adjective for test. So multiple choice, multiple hyphen choice test. Okay, that's just an interesting side note for you, Danish, if you're still with us. Okay, so only change answers if you are 120% sure. It means you're more than sure that you have made a mistake. Otherwise, just leave it and move on. Not to mention that you're also wasting time. Okay? So you're also wasting time. All right. So it looks like all we had time for today, members, is just going through some of these correcting mistakes in the listening section, or questions for the listening section. So just let's review these real quick, and then we'll leave the other topics for future classes. Okay. So in the listening section, the question that was asked by Lee at the beginning is, how do I know when to use plurals? Number one, first of all, practice listening for them so you can catch them. Okay. Of course, be familiar with irregular plurals like people. Okay, which will never have an S on the end, or children. So child, children. So pay attention to that as well. But for regular plurals, like with an S on the end, okay, so paper, papers, practice listening to that S. And if you don't catch it in the audio, then really pay careful attention to the verb and the context of the question to know whether it's plural or singular. Pay attention to the list of nouns. Pay attention to the article. If there's an a or an an, then it's a singular. If there's no article, then you know it's a plural. Okay. Then Amarjeet asked very cleverly, can I just write museum and then brackets S? No, you can't. That will be a mistake most of the time. Be very careful. Students, if you are studying for the IELTS, if you're going to work in an English-speaking country, if you're going to school in an English-speaking country, get a spelling app game on your phone, on your mobile and your tablet, and use it. Play with it. Don't just download it and leave it, but actually use it. Put it on your home screen. These are the ones that our members use: Elevate, Skippy, WordUp, Hello English. Search for spelling bee games. So The competitions for spelling in US, Canada, UK, they're called spelling bees. Okay, just like the little insect, the bee. All right. Then another question was, how do I focus on the audio rather than questions? The answer there is always visualize. Never forget to visualize. Always be active in the information. This starts with the questions. See yourself in the audio. See yourself in the information. Okay? Be a part of what you hear. Okay? If it's abstract, Valiant Venture said, well, what if it's abstract? Then create a physical backdrop. So create a physical context to the abstract ideas, like a circle for the concept of perfect, or abstract art. You're the artist painting those blue circles. Okay? How do you catch pronunciation? That can be tricky. There's a lot of different ways of pronouncing English around the world for native and non-native speakers. So a good way to get better at this is simply to broaden the ability of your ears and your brain to understand a variety of accents. How do you do that? By listening to a variety of accents. So don't just watch American movies, but watch a range of movies from different countries. There's a lot of interesting, exciting movies made all over the world these days. So venture out there. Watch movies from Australia, from New Zealand, from Canada. Okay, there's film industries in all of these countries now. All right, and numbers and dates, practice them. Practice dictating and listening to numbers and dates. Practice their spelling, of course. Should you ever change answers? Rule of thumb for changing answers is no. Okay. Well, we covered, I think, about 7 or 8 different questions for the listening. We even got into the using the hyphen Danish a little bit. Okay, like multiple choice questions. Multiple choice uses a hyphen because it's one modifying adjective. All right, members, that's it for today's class. I know this was a little bit more of a loose class, a broader range of topics. I hope you still enjoyed it and got some valuable information. Now, in 30 minutes, we will have a speaking part 1 class focusing on only speaking part 1, questions, practice, and answers. Have a great rest of your weekend. Hope to see you in the next class, students. Bye for now. Make sure to check us out on our websites for academic IELTS, aehelp.com, for general, gieltshelp.com. You're very welcome, Preeti. Bye for now, students.